I guess we're live. And welcome to the Writer's Life, place where you get the sight, sound, smells, taste of my particular writer's life, where you get the truth about the writer's life. Subscribe, punch the like button, tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on one single exciting video. Go to vinzandri.com for all your thriller needs. A lot of new stuff there. Site's being updated. There's going to be a new blog section. I'm actually not writing it. Other people are writing it because I have too much to write anyway. How about that? A writer's got to find writers to write for his blog. So that's sort of an open invitation out there. Anybody wants to guest blog on my website is welcome to. And it'll go out on Substack and all that sort of stuff to 8,000 people and all that sort of thing. So who knows? Maybe you'll get discovered. Big Philly, what's going on? Second cigar ready. Perfect timing. All right. I was thinking of you, Big Philly, because you asked Harvey Stanbrough, who will be my guest tomorrow, at 3 o'clock. Be there, be square. So Big Philly asked Harvey, the master, when do you know? When do you know it's time to scrap a manuscript? And that's an interesting question because, like you should sort of, it's tough to scrap a manuscript because it's kind of like reading a book. Once you start it, you don't want to stop, even if it sucks. You kind of want to see it through. Maybe it gets better as you go. I've never really scrapped a manuscript. Well, that's not. I probably did in the early days, where like in the early days when it was different, when you had no choice but to query an agent and wait and all that sort of stuff, and you had to have a perfect manuscript. So that probably you would become almost paranoid about the writing. For instance, when I was my third book was, it was The Screamcatcher, which is done well for me and throughout the years. But I wrote and rewrote that a million fucking times, almost to the point of like paranoia. So it's not like my best novel, it's not my worst, but probably the earlier versions of it were better. But I remember that was a book I had so much trouble starting it. And here's another interesting tidbit. I wrote it on a manual typewriter. I wrote it on this guy, I think. That Avaletti or Abigail, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to, and it was like a different rhythm. It was a totally different rhythm, and it was interesting. Like paper, boom, type, boom, and then of course I rewrote it on the computer, line by line. But it took me forever, and it would because I wanted to make it perfect. I wanted to get it out there to the agent and have them like it and have them get a deal for it. I didn't get a deal till years later for it. Now it's like in second or third printing, and I own it again, so that's good. Oh, and by the way, just a little sidebar here. The rights for The Girl Who Wasn't There and Paradox Lake are indeed being reverted back to me. So kudos to the publisher. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've been asking for about, quite a few months now. And I appreciate that. I lost my cool with them, and that's my mistake. And I apologize if they're catching this. Doesn't happen often. Happens enough though. But anyway, they're very gracious in giving me my rights back. I appreciate that. Now I will never sell those books again. Now that I own that little piece of property again, I'll never sell to anyone else again. It will be handed down to my children and their children and their children. And that's why you have to think about things these days. Okay, so I've never really scrapped a book after, like after the early days. I pretty much know that, if the writing's going well, like within the first few sentences. What I have done is written the opening paragraphs of a story or a book or a novella, and then like promised I'd like go back to it or whatever, and like I just sort of do something else. That's about as close as I've come to like actually like this sucks. I rip it up, start all over again. Um, it just means the story either didn't want to be written, or maybe there wasn't a story there to begin with, or I just lost interest in it. That's probably more the latter. I just lost interest in it, or the story morphed into something else. Um, Now I'll tell you, actually, when I go back talk about the screen catcher, I actually used parts of that book when it wasn't selling and wrote the remains. And some of the paragraphs, just paragraphs in the remains, you can actually find in the screen catcher. Like I challenge you to read both books and see what I mean. And you can do that, by the way, as an author. You can you can steal from yourself, and and a couple astute readers picked up on it. They're like, "Wow, there's a couple paragraphs that are like the same in the remains." It doesn't take away from the reading experience, but it's like the same. Um, so those were good readers. Um, because I just didn't think that for a while there, I didn't think Screen Catcher would sell. Um, but then, the remains went wild, sold, hundreds of thousands of copies. And it occupies a place of honor on my wall and in the offices of Thomas and Mercer. Unless by now they've taken it outside and shot it, which is quite possible. Put a bullet hole through it. Who knows? Um, but I gotta say, I actually like these awards for like accomplishments, like in sales, than I do like the Seamus Award or the Thriller Award or whatever, because those are just like, I love them too. Don't get me wrong. That's you're being recognized by your peers for your, I think your proud, your prowess, your talent. Um, but like, you know, but it's cool like being recognized for actual sales. They're both cool anyway. But I have not scrapped anything. I have not like pulled anything out of the metaphorical typewriter and torn it up and just said, "Ah, fuck." Um, and while I'm on the subject of writing, I watched like an old interview with Mickey Spillane today from Philly. Big Philly, you've probably seen this, from 1962. There were some guys interviewing him, um, and he's like, how's your work? How's your writing work? What's your process or whatever. And I was surprised to learn that he said he doesn't write a story until it's ready to be written. He can't just sit down and start writing. So he couldn't write in the dark, into the dark, or whatever that is. And he also said he has to know the ending, which I was surprised at. I hate it when I know the ending to a novel. I hate it because then I'm like caged in. Um, I could always, do something else with it, but I dislike that. Um, I used to force myself to know the ending, because there was like, I would be nervous that I wouldn't be able to finish the book unless I knew the ending. But I know that's not the case anymore. Like the thing I'm writing now, Border Crossings, I have no fucking clue how it's gonna end. I have an idea where it's going, um, but that's about as far as I want to go with it. Anyway, Big Philly. I'm not gonna keep this too long because I still feel like shit. Let's see. 10K into a hard-boiled detective novel and not feeling it. Hope it's not one of mine. Hence my question. Oh, is that what did it? Okay. Short story ideas are my mistresses, always tempting me to, you know what? I hear you, buddy. I don't know what the hell my problem is with writing short stories lately, but every time I sit down I'm going to write a 5,000 word short story. Every time I do that, um, it turns into like a novella or a short novel. I was on a roll there for a while with I was doing like the Twilight Zone type stories for a while. I guess I just have to be in that zone. No pun intended. Um, so maybe when I finish this, I'll just force myself to take on that short story mindset again and get a few out there. But boy, do I have a ton of manuscripts that are going to come out next year. It's going to be a banner year, let me tell you. Between that and crypto, it's going to be a banner year. I have such a backlog right now. If I don't write another word for a year or two, I could still have stuff come out every month, if not a couple of things. But I just love to write, so there you go. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. I will see you tomorrow with the gunny Uncle Harv, um, who I tend to refer to as Stan sometimes because I'm an idiot. What can you do? Man's got to know his limitations. And as always, ciao ciao.